Hello, this is Jill at engVid, and today we have a lesson on words that end with an S, or words where you sometimes add an S for a particular reason and for different reasons, because I found that sometimes people get a little bit confused about whether it's a noun or a verb, whether it's a plural because it has an S on the end, that sort of thing. Also, there's sometimes a question of how to pronounce the word if it has an S on the end. Sometimes I don't hear people pronouncing the S, or there may be other issues about it. So this lesson is to clarify all of that. Okay. So first of all, nice and simple, we add an S, usually on a plural noun. If you have a noun like girl, more than one girl will be girls, and boy becomes boys, dog, dogs, cat, cats, etc. So most plurals in English, you just add an S. There are a few irregular plurals where you don't, like foot and feet, things like that, tooth and teeth, but most nouns you add an S. So obviously that's what happens, just an S at the end. Schools, cars, trees, horse, horses, case, cases, box, boxes. But you can see that in this line you have to make an extra syllable because horse ends with an S sound already. The singular ends with an S sound. So you have to say horses. You have to put the extra syllable us to be able to get another S sound in, because you can't just say horse. You can't hear the extra S clearly enough. It all blends together. So horses, case, cases, box, boxes. Okay. And I noticed that people whose native language, certain native languages like Italian, for example, where plurals in Italian don't involve adding an S, the plurals are formed in a different way. There might be an E at the end or an I at the end to form a plural. So I noticed perhaps with some Italian speakers, even if they're reading from printed material and they're reading words ending in an S, which are plurals, they may not actually pronounce the final S. And you have to really learn and make yourself pronounce that final S when you're speaking in English or reading aloud in English. Okay, so those are the plural nouns. Okay, and then the other main reason for adding an S is in the third person singular of a present tense verb. I'm saying present tense because, again, some people get confused and they think it applies to the third person singular in all tenses, but it doesn't. It's only in the present tense. Okay, so just to show the difference, I lose, she loses, and again we have to have an extra syllable here for loses, because lose ends with an S sound, so we have to do us to get the extra S sound in to make it clear. So I is first person singular, so no S there, but she, he, she, it are third person singular, so you have to add an S in the present tense. Okay, I miss, he misses, again the extra syllable there. And then just to give you some that don't have to have the extra syllable, just to show how that works, I jump, she jumps, So just the S at the end, and make sure it's clear and pronounced. And also to show how this only applies to the present tense. Here we have the past tense. So I jumped, she jumped, no difference. Okay? And then in the future, I will jump, she will jump. There's no S in the future. Okay? It only applies to the present tense for he, she, and it. Okay? So that's plural nouns, third person singular, present tense verb. And just one more thing to mention, there's no apostrophe. Sometimes, even with native speakers, they see an S at the end of a word and they think, oh, I need to put the apostrophe before the S. But the apostrophe is only there if it's a contraction, an abbreviation, if something's missing. So you would only, for example, say, the dog's asleep, meaning the dog is. So the apostrophe represents the missing I. That's the only time that you would put an apostrophe. So this, with plural nouns, also with verbs, you don't put an apostrophe for jumps. The apostrophe means there's a missing letter, like is, usually is. So that's completely different, meaning the dog, singular, the dog is asleep. And then the only other time that you would use an apostrophe would be a possessive, something belonging to the dog. So you might say the dog's dinner, for example. The dog's dinner. I need to prepare the dog's dinner, meaning the dinner for the dog, the dinner belonging to the dog. So there's also the possessive form, just as you would say Mary's house, Mary apostrophe S, house, John's car, John apostrophe S, car, meaning the house or the car belonging to Mary, belonging to John, the dinner belonging to the dog. So that's the only two times where you would use an apostrophe, but not with a plural noun. If it's dogs in the plural, then it's dogs like that, no apostrophe. And if it's a verb, she jumps, then that's the third person singular ending of the verb. She jumps, he jumps, it jumps. You don't put an apostrophe with it. Okay. So I hope that's been a useful explanation, clarification for you. And if you'd like to do a quiz on this subject, just go to the website, engVid.com, and there's a quiz there for you to do to test your knowledge. And so that's it for today. Thank you for watching and hope to see you again soon. Okay, bye for now.